Vanessa Salomons is the director of retail for Monaghan Golf Group, and she takes care of all of our buying, promotions, budgeting, merchandising, anything basically retail wise in our company. She oversees, including our online shop, the Caddy Shop, and I just wanted to ask Vanessa a few questions after coming through a season of um, basically up and down and craziness and not knowing what was happening day to day, especially in the beginning, and thinking that we were going to not have a season to having probably one of the busiest seasons we've seen in our careers. So I think to document that, it would be a good idea just to go through some of the events that happened and how you dealt with it from a retail perspective, and how we came out of it the other end, and maybe some thoughts on what's going to happen next year. So anyway, thanks for joining, B. And I think where we'll start is just go back to basically February, March, kind of maybe even like mid-March, when I would say we had some reports that there was we're going to get into some sort of a lockdown position. And I think you and I had a conversation on the phone about what we were going to do. If you could just describe to me what was going through your mind when there was a pandemic pronounced kind of mid-March.
Yeah, I think first, it's good to be here. Thank you for doing this. I think it's
Awesome.
great. You know what? I think the first thing that obviously goes through anybody's mind is just related to your loved ones and your friends and your family and our teams. What's going to happen? We really had no idea what the heck this thing was and how it was going to impact us. I think as we started to find out about course closures and things like that, we started to really feel like that loss of normalcy and the whole fear of like what's going to happen economically, like how is this really going to impact us, um, and then the loss of connection, like between just our teams, and how is this all going to work. And I think from after all of that kind of set in, it was more about, okay, now what are we going to do and how are we going to try to deal with this.
Hmm.
I think the first thing that came to my mind is how are we going to save everybody's jobs? Like,
For
what
sure.
possibly can we do? And I think that's when the whole, in my mind, everything sort of boiled down to like e-commerce and um, how do we more use this as an opportunity and take such a really horrible situation and turn it into something positive.
Hmm.
And I think we did a good job of that. We really had no idea whether we were going to reopen in April or May or June or never. And
Hmm.
and I think that uncertainty was just, I don't think any of us really had a clue as to how to deal with it.
No, definitely. I think it was a shocker for sure. And you talk about people losing their jobs and the layoffs that we were forced to have company wide. It was nerve wracking and disappointing to say the least. But like you said, we once we to use a bit of an overused phrase, pivot a little bit. um, we managed to be able to come up with ideas and turn some things around to a certain extent. How about when we're talking about a retail plan? So planning for the season, it really starts the basically the end of the season before. So the 2019 season had wrapped up, and you had your plan all ready to go for 2020. How did the closures of the golf courses affect your retail plan, especially not really having an idea what the future was going to hold?
Yeah, I think that's a that's a good question. I think in my mind, the first thing that happened was just we're canceling 2020. Like that's just it. We're
Hmm.
done. I can be honest. I mean, I spent March and April canceling orders. We rejigged our plans to reflect 2 to 3 months of closures. We just didn't know how long it was going to last, and we spent an inordinate amount of time just um, going through different needs assessments. What happened if we open in April? What do we need? What's that going to look like? How is it going to work for us in our favor? And again, e-commerce became a massive focus. You brought it back, with Miles, and you guys started the delivery and curbside pickup. And then eventually we ended up getting back into shipping. I don't think that saved retail for us for 2020, but it definitely was something that we would not have focused on, I think, for another couple of years.
Hmm.
It would have taken a lot longer to kind of get it up and running. So, I mean, that's a big positive. I think the biggest category that was hit was obviously apparel. Um, so we just actually turned that whole category off. People didn't want to try things on, and managing that type of inventory, I think, was cumbersome and time consuming. We didn't know how long to quarantine stuff for. We didn't know, you know, having product pulled off the floor meant that it wasn't available for people. So I think that was a huge challenge. And then I think our decision was to just focus on categories that we knew were going to explode. And because we now recognize that these customers had different needs. So, they're staying home, they're looking at doing more things like training from home, and training aids became a big category for us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what about when we ended up reopening? Obviously, we had a little bit of a staggered reopening. We had some courses opening in, beginning of May. We had one opening mid-May, and our driving range was opening later, so that was affecting club sales and fitting and that sort of thing. But what did you see happening in the retail environment once we got reopened?
Yeah. I think in the beginning, I know in the beginning people were scared to shop. So that was a real, concern for us. What does our shopping experience look like now? The one thing that we did do was, I mean, we had high protocols in place. It wasn't a safe place to go. It was just that people were in and out and trying to get in as fast as possible and get out as fast as
Hmm.
possible. And that's what we wanted, right? So things like bulk items were removed from the floor. We didn't want people's hands in jars and stuff like that. I think we had a hard time figuring out apparel and footwear. So those categories just sort of were on the fringe. Um, and then we completely revamped the shop for impulse buys, and we created those queues. And we obviously knew people were still going to need commodity items and golf balls and tees and all of that kind of stuff. So we really focused on the quick grab items. And what that did, I think, we had chatted about this about a year before, and we knew that we were already going to start to change our buying patterns, but it increased our turn ratios dramatically.
Hmm.
And it forced us to rethink these patterns that we have been going through for the last few years. The one thing that did happen, our margins did decrease in the early months because golf balls obviously are notoriously low in margin.
Hmm.
But because of the higher volumes, we ended up net. So we ended up finishing the season pretty good,
Hmm.
related to those categories, just based on pure volume.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and I think one of the other biggest things that we recognized was the availability of products in the Canadian market.
Hmm.
And as you know, that's the whole supply chain just became broken early,
Hmm.
and specific products were continually sold out, and we had no hope of replenishing anything. So, I think that has spurred us into a different type of situation heading into 2021, because I don't think that is going to change. I think we're going to have, continuously sold out products, and we're just going to have to try to figure out how to work our retail plans around that so we can continue to make our budgets.
Right. Yeah, it was a different looking shop for sure when we got reopened, and it made total sense to us, less touch points and that sort of thing. But then, as the wheels got turning and people understood that this was kind of their option for outdoor time, they can't do a lot of the other sports. There was sports being canceled, a lot of indoor stuff was canceled. How did you react when you saw this explosion in golf? Like, what was your reaction when you're getting calls saying, we're out of golf balls and it's just been a week since we've had our shipment? And just the growth that you saw. How did you react to that?
I mean, obviously, I was super excited, but
Hmm.
I had wow, I was blown away. I really had no, I had no inkling that that was absolutely going to happen.
Hmm.
And, and I'm still intrigued by it. I think that it's going to continue to change the demographic because we don't even know who that is anymore. We've
Right.
seen more women come into golf. We've seen more youth. We've seen, sort of that different kind of in between demographic. And so that's going to definitely change what we decide to bring in the future.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is going to continue on the same level. I sure hope it does. But getting more people involved in the game, it's just fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, I think people will always feel that it's a safe place to go now too. So this isn't going to turn around overnight. It's going to take a few years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's great. I think you know I think we don't know how long either, how long we're going to be at home for. So I do have a feeling that we are going to have to sort of change our categories again. Um, I don't think it's going to happen in 2021, but heading into 2022, again, we go back to what does that mean for our budgets? Like, what are people really interested in? What are people buying now? What's the next hot thing?
Right.
And yeah, I don't think we're not gonna quite understand that concept until we figure out who our demographic is.
Yeah, it's changed. We've seen a lot of new faces for sure at all the golf courses, and young and old, women, men, like it's and kids. It's been a crazy boom. And I think moving in, you were talking about the 2021 season, 2022 season. Obviously, we had a very strange season, but how did you change your buying plan for 2021 after seeing what had happened in 2020? Like, does that how do you wrap your head around such a weird year, and how does that factor into how you plan for 2021?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think you and I have discussed at length, and this was long before the pandemic ever hit,
Mhm.
about changing how we do our buying, just more based on our thought processes based around cash flow, based around excess inventory and all kinds of other things. So we've always been looking for a way, at least in the last 2 years, to be a little bit more efficient in our buys and maybe not do so much front end loading. So I think our buys for 2021, they look really different. I'm going to be purchasing throughout the year, and not all vendors have gotten on board with this.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit difficult because of the way we traditionally buy. So I am just focusing right now on utilizing vendors that understand our new process.
Mhm.
We're going to be focused on turn ratios. We're going to be buying a little, selling it all through, buying again, selling through, buying again, selling through, and just keeping that process going.
Mhm.
So again, we're not going to front end load. We're just going to keep trying to be efficient and sell through products like year round. I also think we're going to try to continue to seek out products for 2021 that still fit in with the pandemic way of thinking. I don't like again. I don't think that's going to change until at least 2022, and maybe even thereafter. Who
Right.
knows? Um, yeah. So I think for the next couple of years, anyway.
Do you see the retail landscape changing, like moving into the future? Or do you think this is like a little blip in the radar, and then come 2022, 23, it's back to the way it was in 18, 19?
I think that there's two schools of thought on it. Definitely, we know from mainstream retail, online shopping is going to continue to grow in ways that we've never seen it grow before, and we might not be ready for that yet, but we've just got to keep pushing forward with it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that the shift in consumer behavior, like we've noticed already, that people in our old main golf age demographic, which is like what 60 plus,
Mhm.
they're going online. Like I even think of people like my parents who are in their 70s who never would shop online before. They're avid golfers, and that's where they're buying their products now. Um, so I think we just need to, like, as retailers, we just need to go where the attention is.
Yep.
And yeah, I think we need to also though be careful of overcorrecting because, as you said, things are going to turn around and go back to a little bit more of a norm. So the traditional avenues, they're going to resurface, of course.
Mhm.
Um, but I think if anything, we just need to consider the idea of omni channels. So multiple selling places. Yes, our shops are still going to be busy, but what are they going to be? what are we going to be selling regularly? Is it impulse? Is it special orders? Is it equipment? Like, what does that look like? And what does
Mhm.
our online store look like?
Right,
Is that more apparel based? I don't know. I don't know
right.
how we're going to work it yet, but we're
That
going to try to
moves
follow, I think, along with mainstream retail.
that moves into nicely into my next question, which would be about e-commerce. How do you, what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, it's brought it to the forefront for all of us. I think everybody in the world, pretty much, that's important. But for golf, it's, we've discussed this. It's never been done really, really well. Online stores. So, what are your thoughts on e-commerce moving forward through the next few years and into the
Yeah,
future?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think every industry like has become digital overnight. They've had to. Everybody's just had to deal with this, and it's taken it's taken them a few weeks in order to get products and everything else uploaded into their sites versus whereas before it would have taken years to do this kind of thing.
Right.
Um, Consumer behaviors changed. We know this. We have to find ways. This is a big thing to differentiate our online brand from service level and taking that online. And I think with our marketing department, that's a big challenge, right? Like, how do we differentiate ourselves from a golf town or another big box that's online? I think we're still early to the game, so there's lots of opportunity.
Mhm.
We're continuing to work on our ecom brand and successes, and I feel that we're going to come it's going to come from a customer sense of belonging. I don't think you can just go online and just sell stuff.
Right.
You've got to create something that golfers want to be a part of.
Yep.
And we're working through that. We're working on our branding with the caddy shop and just trying to figure out where we fit in and how that's going to look in the future.
Right.
But I think it's a huge potential, and I think we're going to do this. I really do.
Yeah. And do you see other golf brands sort of growing, or like from an e-commerce perspective, like, do you think everybody's going to get into the e-commerce game, and then you'll see some key players, or are there golf shops and golf um, facilities and whatnot that are just going to say that's not our shtick?
I think so. I mean, you know what it's like. The golf business is notoriously slow for change. So I think places like maybe some of the more like membership clubs, there's a huge potential for them to get online and just they've got their membership to deal with. And if those people are shopping online, they need to be online.
Yeah, for sure.
For people like us, being in the public sector, I think it's just more about the right product mix. I don't know that we need to be competing against big box retailers. I just think we need to have some sort of a brand recognition, and it's still going to be about our local customers that are utilizing us. And I think as we grow that and people start to understand who we are, we're a small business, we're a local Canadian company. I think that rings a bell in a lot of people's minds, and that makes them really want to shop with us.
We hope.
We hope.
How about moving forward as we approach the 2021 season? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I love watching the e-commerce portion grow. I think that's the biggest thing. Keep working on that and see where that ends up. I also think, the changing golf landscape, like I said, golf is notoriously slow in their processing, and I think this year has spurred us into efficiency and new avenues to bring different products to our end users. So, I think also I'm looking forward to a big change between B2B. So, like our vendors, just how they're going to adapt to different buying patterns going forward,
Hmm.
because that obviously changes everything we do. It changes how we purchase, when we go to buying shows, what that looks like. Do buying shows exist?
Hmm.
Um, and just looking at it more from a fiscally responsible way of purchasing, I think.
Right. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, everybody's battling for dollars and expenses. As we see, expenses have gone up because we have all these protocols in place, and we have more staff, and we have um, many different areas that expenses have increased, and so we're trying to fill that gap between the expense and revenue side. And I think that I'm optimistic, obviously, about 2021. 2020 was a shock, and I think 2021 we can plan a little bit around it, and then moving forward, I'm not 100% sure. From the things that I'm hearing, we're kind of going to be in this honeymoon for maybe 18 to 24 months, is what they're saying, and then maybe it'll start to normalize a little bit. But I think riding this wave is something that we need to do, and hopefully what we can see after all this has played out is the golfers that have come back to the game and the new golfers have caught the bug, become addicted to golf, or know that golf is a safe place, and we can retain them, because I think that's a huge thing in our business, is the retention rates. We just need to be able to retain these new golfers, and the ones who are coming back to it, and if we can do that, our future's looking pretty good. So yeah, I'm excited for the year, and I just wanted to thank you for you know giving us some insight into what you went through this year, because I think obviously it's an unprecedented time, and you had to adapt and adjust, just like all of us did, but on a big scale when it comes to stocking shops with merchandise, and having to adapt to many different things around that. So do you have any final words before we say goodbye?
I think, you know what, it was a surprising year, obviously, but, you know, I think everybody was, the adversity that everybody had across the board. I'm so impressed with everybody, all of our teams. I think everybody, they just towed the line, and we all tried to make it work. And
Hmm.
I think, we should just be really proud of the entire industry, to be perfectly honest, with how we've sort of ended up, because I know that pretty much all of us are in the same boat.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's been tough but rewarding for sure. So let's hope
Absolutely.
for a good year coming up here. And thanks for your insight, V. We really appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.